A unique feature to any Affinity product is the personas within it. Affinity Designer, for example, has a draw persona, a pixel persona, and a export persona, which you see in the top left of the toolbar. You can customize your toolbar to your liking inside of your actual Affinity Designer preferences to move these around. We'll do that in a different video. But for now, I want to explore the export persona. And as you can see in this mock-up right now, I have just kind of an idea for the mobile version of Affinicasts on the videos landing page. Here I'll have basically a call out to each application: Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and coming soon Affinity Publisher. Inside that, we'll give a little bit of data on how many videos and courses we have on the site. And then you can click through to those specific categories to view a more in-depth view of each. So the general consensus here is I want to have these assets ready for web, and when I code up the site, I want to have them just ready to go, basically. Luckily, Affinity Designer comes with a persona called Export Persona, which makes this process fairly simple. One thing to keep in mind is naming conventions when you are exporting assets. A common gotcha is to actually just forget to rename your layer or group or whatever it is you're exporting. In my design, I typically do this after the fact when I'm actually working on exporting assets. So I'll go back through and kind of clean up layers, group certain things, make things more organized. So when I ever revisit the file, say to update design or just get more assets out of it that maybe I forgot, it's fairly easy to traverse and find those assets. So right now I have 3 groups of content here which contain each of these blocks, which would be basically, if you're thinking on your phone, you tap this block to go to the next page. What I want out of these are the icons, the little chevron right icon, and the actual Affinity photo icon. You'll notice these aren't the actual icons of the app because that'd be kind of plagiarism in my mind. So I didn't want to recreate them exact or utilize their icons because it's just against their rights and copyrights and stuff like that. So none of your concern, but that's why they look different. We also want to export the menu icon for the mobile menu, and of course the Affinicasts logo, which is our awesome telescope there. So to make my life easier, I want to go ahead and rename these layers to something more meaningful right now. The menu icon, for instance, just has a curves indication, doesn't actually have a name. So I'm going to go ahead and add that menu icon. And inside each of these, I will actually do the same. So I'm going to do chevron, if I can spell chevron right. And we only really need one of those, but I'm going to go ahead and rename them all just in case I run into hiccups later. So we'll do a photo here for Affinity Photo. And we'll do the same for the next 2 groups. So with those renamed, we should be in good shape to continue. Let's go ahead and go into the export persona. So in this view, you will see some new tools appear, and the main one you use is what's already active. It's the slice tool. You can actually draw specific slices or select slices that already exist. By default, if you're using artboards or even just your basic document, that's going to be a default slice. You can go ahead and modify that or remove it if you like. To see the slices in your design, you can go ahead and go to the slices tab over here. Here we have the iPhone mockup, which is titled after the artboard itself. So if I just wanted to export this, I can go ahead and do so. Getting deeper into this UI, basically what's checked right now, if I were to click export slices, it gets exported and it'll tell you which area to export those. But we want specific things out of this design as opposed to just the whole thing. If I wanted to go back and just save the actual design as an image to share with someone, I'd probably just do the export dialog. Here you can adjust it however you like to go ahead and export. To get to that, you'll go to File and Export, or do Option Command Shift S. Going back to the export persona, in this case, we just want specific things, like I said. So I'm going to actually dive into the layers panel. And from here, you can actually go and find specific things. So let's say the logo we'll start with, and create a slice just by having that layer selected and then clicking the create slice button. You can toggle appearance if you don't want that to actually export when you do export it. In this case, we do. So I'm going to go ahead and do the menu icon the same way. And you'll notice it gives dimensions to each. And we'll get into actually exporting in a second after I do these remaining icons. So I'm going to do that for each of these blocks. Create a slice there. And we'll just do this first chevron. We don't need to do all of them. So as you create those slices, if you were to go back over to the slices tab, you'll see those appear here. And you'll see why I said it was important to name those things to start with, because you'll see those automatically be propagated with that layer name. So in our case, I don't want to export the actual background. So I'll uncheck that box. I'll uncheck the iPhone mockup artboard box. I don't really need that at this point. It's there for your convenience if you want to go ahead and use it your own. But we're really concerned with the actual icons themselves. Exporting itself can be done in such a way to where there's multitude of file types to go ahead and choose from. There's presets kind of out of this world for OS X specific icons, different types of high quality JPEGs, in this case like Retina, or even just regular single quality JPEGs. To get a new file type as an export, by default, you'll probably have a PNG selected. You can configure that in the presets here. And as you can see, there's quite a few to choose from, which is awesome. For each preset, feel free to modify their settings below. You'll have quite a few to choose from here. So PNG, for instance, you can use a specific document format, you could resample, etc. And if you want to create a new preset, you can do so once you modify a certain preset that already exists. So we won't get into that. We'll probably use the ones out of the box in this video, but I will show you just kind of the inner workings of how to make kind of a process or workflow of exporting assets. I know by default, I want every icon to be a PNG just to have as a backup. I want to use it without its background, obviously, because we don't want the white on the background of each icon. By default, that's already set up for us, and that's splendid. That's awesome. What if we are on a Retina screen? We probably want that icon to be double its size, or Retina quality. To do that, you simply click this plus button on each icon, and it'll actually automatically do that for you. Lo and behold, there's even more presets if you want it 3 times the size, or all of these different parameters here if you're into a specific set. So we'll go ahead and do that for each of these. So now that we have our PNGs set up, I also like to utilize SVG where I can. SVG code is basically embeddable into a web page, so you don't have to worry about loading an image or optimizing an image or just dealing with heavy images. None of these are really heavy images, and it wouldn't really take a performance hit, but it's still that much more work to get them to render correctly on certain screens. And SVG, hopefully, as you know, is scalable. So it stands for Scalable Vector Graphics, if you don't know. They're really great for Retina screens. So pretty much any new phone that comes out or any new tablet that you use has Retina quality graphics on it. So you'll want to go ahead and maintain those as much as possible. Otherwise, those images will look pretty blurry. The same is true for having support for older phones that don't have that. So that's why we still need our regular size images as well. With that in mind, you can also add a new preset completely that isn't a PNG. So in this case, I want to add SVG for web for each. And it doesn't really have any prefixes or anything here. By the way, if you were to save these out, this file name gets appended a 2x on it. By default, that's automatic. You don't have to worry about renaming the file or anything like that. So that's convenience from Affinity Designer. We'll choose SVG for web for now. These others are great for, as you see, print or flattened. They're basically just presets of which you can go ahead and configure up here to your liking. You can even tell it to not rasterize anything that's just unsupported. I kind of find myself doing that a lot just because sometimes there's some quirks with this export process for SVGs. It's not a big deal, but sometimes I run into trouble. So that's where you'll want to adjust those changes when you do go ahead and export. So I'll add that for all of the rest. So now each file has a single pixel density PNG at 1x, one at 2x for retina screens, and then also a SVG for retina screens and just basically convenience when it comes time to code. So at this point, say we're happy with what we have here. We want to export these assets. There's quite a bit more things you can do during this process, like creating a specific file name and path for each. I will get into that in a different video. If you wanted to add like variables to a specific file type that kind of are dynamic, so you don't have to go and manually rename files, it gets pretty deep. For this video, I'll keep it pretty simple. So as you can see, like I said before, these are checked, and that's what will get exported. If you wanted to export a specific icon, in our case, you can actually just go ahead and click to singly export that icon. The same is true for a specific file type. You'll see these icons to export on each size and each file type that we created, which is really convenient. Or super convenient if you're just getting into the export, is to export everything all at once. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll hit this export slices. As you can see, it shows the count to the right. Affinity Designer will ask you where to basically save these files. I'm going to go ahead and just put images on my desktop for now, and we'll go ahead and export those. And just like that, it's already done. I'll go ahead and go to my desktop so I can show you the folder. And inside we have our single pixel density PNG, our 2x PNG, and our SVG. And you can see how big that is based on its vector quality, which is great. So the same is true for all the files. Here's Affinity Photo, Publisher, Chevron, menu icon, and our logo. Awesome. So as you can see, that is extremely beneficial to your workflow if you're working in an application like this. I find it like way useful when it comes to exporting all my assets at once. If I just want to make an entire process around it and make things streamlined, Affinity Designer's export persona is the tool to use.